afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us on today's webinar. We're very glad you're here. I'm Madison Hartman, the Pennsylvania Coalition Manager for Parents for School Options. Today, we are embarking on an important discussion into the federal free school lunch program and the crucial role it plays in nourishing our students, particularly our cyber students. So we're going to spend the next 40 to 45 minutes unwrapping the layers of the program, diving into its impact on student welfare and educational outcomes, and what needs to be done to make it a reality for all students, again, including our cyber school students. Here with us to help us navigate the complexities of the issue, we're grateful to have Cynthia Williams, Vice President of the PSO Board, joining us. I will invite Cynthia to introduce herself and give an overview of PSO and our work nationally before diving into a presentation that she so expertly prepared for us. After her presentation, I will ask Cynthia a few questions before opening it up to audience Q&A. So after that, the floor will be open to all of you for your queries. Please feel free to drop them in the chat to me directly. Cynthia, I will pass the mic over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Madison. It is a pleasure to be here to speak with your families in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state near and dear to my heart. My parents are both from Pennsylvania. Although I grew up in Ohio, I have a lot of heart for your families in Pennsylvania. As you said, I am the vice president of the Parents for School Options Board. I've been on this national board for 4 years now. And I am also the president of the Ohio Parents for Educational Freedom here in Ohio. So we've been working very, very hard on this issue, and we're very excited to have you all join us. I was an online school parent. My daughters both went to Ohio Virtual Academy. It is our online school here in Ohio. They're all grown and both graduated, but I am still very involved and vetted in making sure that cyber school students and online students throughout the nation get what is fairly theirs in educational options. So who are we? The Parent for School Options is an advocacy group, and what we do is we support families in their pursuit of free and equitable access to a high quality education. We defend the family's right to choose options that are safe, enriched, and suit the needs of all individual children. Now, we give a voice to all options, all families, and all backgrounds all throughout the nation. Next. So the problem we're here today to talk with you about is our National School Lunch Program. This is a program that was created by President Eisenhower back in 1946. And what happens, we need to have some various changes to make sure that the ineligibility and offerings come to our online and cyber school students. What we have found is that they're not receiving, even if they're income eligible, they're not getting their free or reduced lunch or breakfast because of an 80-year-old standard. Next. So our solution, and we've been working on this for a number of years now, is to amend the school lunch and breakfast programs, which would require the state Secretary of Agriculture to create new rules. These schools are serving otherwise eligible students learning in a full-time online or virtual environment so that they can participate in the school lunch and breakfast programs through the provision of meals and benefits to them in their home environment. Next. So, as I told you, this has been an effort that we've been working across the nation to fix. What we did was we wrote a letter to the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, about this issue. And then we've also met with USDA staff back in April. Our PSO board and staff met with members of Congress in April and then again in November just to cover this issue. Now, in June, our PSO held our annual National Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C., specifically so that we could target this issue. We had briefings on Capitol Hill, and we had parents that had come to our conference that had over 30 meetings with congressional offices to talk to them about their online school experience and the lack of the food program money flowing into the students that need that are eligible for that program. So we've also worked on compiling stories of impacted family through our social media. And currently we have over 180 stories of families that are being affected all throughout our nation because of this food insecurity. We also have an ongoing social media awareness campaign, and we're working to build relationships with other organizations and schools that are interested in changing this policy with us. Next. I do have some breaking news for you all. Today is actually a day that we have a member of our PSO leadership on the Hill today speaking to members of Congress. Our board president, Latricia Weber, is in Washington, and she is working to try and get lawmakers to sign onto a letter that we'll be sending to Secretary Vilsack again, urging the USDA to adopt appropriate rules to allow public school students in a virtual setting to participate in the relevant food support programs. We're asking that he would begin those rules so that starting July 1st, schools educating students eligible under this section that are being educated in a virtual or online setting can get that breakfast or breakfast assistance and lunch to the students without the requirements of a congregate setting or being consumption on site, meaning that they don't need to be in a brick building to receive these benefits. So we're also asking members of Congress to pursue and report language encouraging the same. We want members of Congress to adopt similar language in the Farm Bill or other legislation that require USDA authorized states to permit qualified students in a non-congregate setting to participate in the relevant food programs. Next. So here's a few stories that we've gathered across the nation of families who, through our social media campaign, sent us how their families are being affected. So Nina in Colorado wrote to us that with both children at home, we have to make sure that they have enough food to eat to be able to learn, in addition to them growing like crazy. This means the adults in the house eat one meal a day to make sure that they have enough to stretch so that their children can eat. Jessica, who's a friend of mine personally, is also affected. They had to decide between keeping the children safe from bullying or food security. Unfortunately, her children don't have well-balanced meals that they would have at the traditional school because they cannot afford them. This past year, her daughter had to go back to in-person school at her local brick and mortar district to lighten their food costs each month. Even though her grades and mental health were better at home, she had to choose between making sure that mental health versus physical health and getting the nutrition that she needs. And she, as me as well, believe that no parent should have to choose between these types of options. Isabella in Texas is a single mom on disability and dialysis, and it's hard for her to feed 2 children and herself with her small food stamp allotment every month. So you can see there are families that need this food that are heavily impacted and making very rough and tough decisions as a parent to make sure that their children are getting all of their needs met. Next. So you can get involved. Talk to the families in your schools. See how this issue is impacting them. And then share our campaign content out on all of your social media. You can find us at I Trust Parents on Facebook, X, and also on Instagram. As I said, we're on the Hill today, working and stomping those grounds. Today is actually National School Meals Day. So if you want to post a picture of your child eating a meal or enjoying some food that you would like to have supplemental help with, you can post that all on your social media channels. Also, we ask that you reach out to your congressional leaders to discuss this issue with them. And you can speak with Madison, your coalition manager, who can help you make those appointments to speak with those legislators. She can also help you. We do a lot of letter writing. You can write an op-ed to your local newspaper on this specific issue. And if you have any questions, please refer to Madison, your coalition manager, at publicschooloptions.org. I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at itrustparents@parentsforschooloptions.org. Thank you for your time. And I appreciate all your help in making sure that we make sure our nation's children have the food that they need to learn, grow, and be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that very enlightening presentation. I am going to ask you a couple questions before we turn it over to audience Q&A. I just want to start with, in Pennsylvania specifically, do we have a rough idea of how many cyber students would be impacted by the federal school lunch program?
Yeah, we do. I'm glad you asked that. So in the data that we've been able to gather, in Pennsylvania, there are approximately 10,732 total cyber school students. What we figured is 50% of them would qualify for a free or reduced lunch. So that's half of the students learning in a cyber school that are affected in Pennsylvania. 28% of those students are African American, 12% are Hispanic, 27% of those kids are special needs students who we know nutrition is very important to. And 2% of the children affected in Pennsylvania are actually English language learners. So that's a large bit of your population, really.
Wow. I wanted to ask you something about the pandemic as it relates to the school lunch issue. As a parent yourself, what was COVID like for your family, and what difference would the federal free school lunch program have made for your family? And more broadly speaking, are there any lessons we can learn from the pandemic as it relates to this issue?
Yes, absolutely. So my daughter graduated in 2020. So had she been a lower grade in Ohio specifically, we received PEBT. So it was a pandemic EBT card that was sent to most of the families that had children in brick and mortar schools. And it also was sent to some of the families that had online school students as well. So students were receiving benefits. And then when the pandemic ended, those PEBT cards went away because most of the brick and mortar school students went back to their buildings and were receiving their food in that congregate setting. Unfortunately, what happened is the students that still remained at home doing online learning no longer received those EBT cards, even if they were income eligible as a family. So sadly, what has happened is families that maybe were affected because a lot of people's jobs were changed during the pandemic. So families' incomes were changing as well. So students really took the hit when the students went back to school. Those families that were eligible received nothing any further. So we did learn that there is a way and an avenue to make sure that all these students do receive their free and reduced food lunch monies on an EBT card. So it really wouldn't be that difficult. We're not asking to expand the program or for more money. We're just asking that the money that is due to those children who are income eligible should be receiving that money, not the school district who's not feeding them.
From a parent's perspective, what resources and support mechanisms are there to enhance awareness and understanding of the program?
So honestly, Madison, that's where we rely upon you, our coalition managers and our national coalition, the Parents for School Options. Every state's parents have the ability to work within their coalition to organize, do letter writing campaigns, post on social media, make sure that your state coalition is posting on social media, follow the National Parents for School Options coalitions and repost all of our social media on everything that you have. Speak to your family, even your family who might not be using cyber schools. Make sure that everyone you know is aware of that issue. The only way we can actually solve it is to create awareness. And that as a parent is our job to make sure that people that are affected use their voices to let the people know what's happening.
What about kids with special dietary needs? How does this program meet those needs?
So in a brick and mortar school district, the school district is required for any students that have special dietary needs, they have to provide school substituted food items. Now, in order for that to happen in a brick and mortar school, those students have to have medical documentation that's handed in so the school knows what to provide and what cannot be provided. Now, for students that are learning at home, it would be very simple because the parents are already purchasing foods that are meeting that child's specific dietary needs. So just by supplying that money directly to the family, we can make sure that those children, even with special dietary needs, are getting what's needed by them in their home environment.
Makes sense. What challenges are there or barriers to including virtual charter school students in this program, and how can we address those challenges?
So the barriers that we're facing really are all um, something that needs to be fixed in language in that original documentation. So what we need to do is ask members of Congress to sign that letter to Secretary Vilsack. And we need to keep urging the USDA to adopt appropriate rules to allow public school students in a virtual or cyber setting to participate in these relevant food support programs. We are also asking members of Congress to pursue and change the language. This language is 80 years old. It's outdated. We need to make sure it keeps up with the times. So just working with your coalition, doing the letter writing campaigns, petitioning Secretary Tom Vilsack and the USDA, making sure that your congressmen, your local politicians are aware of what's happening and see if they would be willing to write letters as well to support your family and your children and your choice.
So, is there any specific piece of legislation circulating in the House or the Senate as we speak on this issue?
No, not at the moment. Right now, we're still in that letter writing campaign. That's why we have Mrs. Weber is at the Hill today trying to get members of Congress to sign off on that letter, urging Secretary Vilsack to change that language. Or if we can get them to change the language in the Farm Bill, but somehow legislatively, we have to have that language changed.
And then, Cynthia, you touched on parent stories from across the country. Is there anything else you can share on what the exclusion is, how it really is impacting families and students specifically? Are there any other interesting anecdotes that you can share with us?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I actually have quite a number of parents from Pennsylvania who also sent in their stories. One parent stated that she's a single parent and that there's always a food shortage in her house with growing teenagers. And unfortunately, she feels that she also is serving inadequate food to her children because that's all they can really afford. So a lot of people are being affected. Another parent in Pennsylvania told us that with the cost of food continually on the rise, that they have had to sacrifice paying bills to ensure that their children have food. Now, they don't think that it's fair just because they chose to do a cyber school for safety reasons in their family, that they would be excluded from the same benefits in-person families receive. So, we know that there are stories out there, people are being affected, and that we need to help them and we need to make sure that we can affect this change.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really enlightening discussion, Cynthia. That wraps up our Q&A. I just want to give my sincere thank you for you being here today and for your really expert presentation. Appreciate everyone who joined. Again, if you have any questions or any follow-up, please don't hesitate to email me at madison@publicschooloptions.org. And if you have stories you'd like to share, please let me know. We would love to collect them and help you make your voice heard. And so thank you everyone for being here today. And we look forward to chatting with you in the future.